really knew from an early age that I wanted to help people and be a healer of some sort. I thought doctor, because that's very familiar to people. And really that was just a calling that I had. And as I went into school and learned more studies, I started becoming a little bit more scientific and objective and scientific method and learning things in the way that we teach people in the Western world, kind of that reductionist model of looking at individual pieces. And, that's valued in our current medical system and our scientific world, is to understand little pieces, but really didn't get the full picture. And but I went through a very conventional Western medical training. My parents are from India, so I knew about Ayurveda, but to me it was more of home remedies, and I didn't really appreciate from a young age, or even as a medical student, how vast of a medical system it really was, that it was a whole medical science. So of course I was exposed to different things as a young child, and learned some yoga, learned to meditate from my mom. But then as I got sort of brainwashed into the objective, just looking at objective evidence, I think I sort of it drew me further and further away from the qualitative experience of things that I knew worked, but there wasn't maybe any evidence for it. So of course you are not thought of as a professional, scientific, knowledgeable person if you talk about things that don't have evidence. So I went into family practice because I was very interested in the whole person, and I understood that things that affect people, you need to also understand what's going on in their job, in their family. So at least I had that perspective. And prevention, of course, preventing disease. But what I found after I got out is that I really only had a few tools in my toolbox, either some small procedures or, more extensive procedures, or a prescription pad and a pen, and that didn't solve everyone's problems. In fact, sometimes it would help short term, and then people would come back and it wasn't working anymore. And so then you just end up writing another prescription, and that wasn't very satisfying to me. Or you would write something and they would have a side effect to it. And then they'd have a side effect to the next one you tried and the next one you tried. And I realized I went through all this medical training and I didn't know what to do with people who had side effects from the medicine, except write another prescription for a medicine that helps that side effect. And intuitively and also intellectually, that didn't make sense to me. So there was that group of people, and then there were the group of people who you tried medication on and it just plain didn't work or didn't help. And they would come back to you and say, this isn't helping, and then you would send them to a specialist who had no answers. So I had a big group of people like this, of course, being in primary care. And also I had the advantage when I came out of school of doing many different types of working in many different types of settings. So I was in the emergency room on call, took care of patients in the hospital, and then when they were discharged from the emergency room or the hospital, they came back to see me.
So you really had a full spectrum.
Exactly. So approach. I think in Western medicine, as we become so specialized, sometimes people don't realize what happens to people once they leave the ER. They think they've fixed them, but they don't realize they're back in their primary care physician's office no better than they were, before they came into the ER. Or they'll see a specialist, and people who that whatever their approach isn't working, they don't ever come back to that person. The people that things are working for, they'll come back, and of course those are the success stories. So I think often specialists don't have that perspective of all these people out there that tried what they said and it just didn't work, or it harmed them and they never went back. So in the position I was in, I was doing things in the ER, I was treating people in inpatient, then they would come back to see me. So I pretty much better make sure that they were better, So I think that was the first time I realized that you can't just treat people's acute problem and send them home and forget about them, because they're coming back and they're not better. So a lot of my patients explored things on their own, other healing modalities, other medical systems, things they'd looked up on the internet. And I started exploring other alternative, integrative healing modalities on my own with my patients. And that led me on a long journey toward coming back to Ayurveda. And the more I read about it, the more I realized it's really a very holistic, good foundation for healthcare, and it addresses the person from mind, body, spirit, because there can be an imbalance or a disconnect from our natural state of health in any of those areas. There can be emotional turbulence, which definitely translates into physical imbalance, and we can show that now with science showing us this mind-body connection. There can be obviously physical imbalances, and that's what we're mostly designed to treat, physical issues in the Western medical model. And then spiritual, which even in a lot of mind-body systems, people dance around that concept of spirit, and I think at the Chopra Center we do a good job of also addressing that spiritual component, like feeling connected to your true self, your higher nature, what exists outside of body and mind, and accessing that inner healer. And honestly, that's probably where I notice most of the transformation.